Hello, my friends. This is more of an evening cozy chat. I just want to tell you guys some of these just incredible experiences of really deep healing I've had recently in my life. And again, to highlight in a really positive way that healing can take time and it can still happen, especially when it's from really deep, complex things and your journey's been long. And also to kind of debunk some myths that I see a lot about the environment or the things that we need to recover that really aren't actually needed. Not for everybody, at least. A couple of those, one of them, these revolve around relationships with other people and food. I guess that's really it. It's kind of relationships to food, body, and people. And I had a partial relapse in March of 2023. And when that happened, so I fully recovered I fully recovered limbically for between 2017 and 2020. Like right before COVID hit, I'd reached recovery. And then COVID happened, my marriage crumbled. That was a big fiasco. That was like a several year long perfect storm. And then partial relapse in March of 2023. And then in August of 2023, I bought my first house and I was moving into parent my kids, my 5 children, full-time. Not full-time all the time, but by myself in the house with them. The first time ever parenting all of my kids in a house that was entirely my responsibility and no other adults were living there to help. And at that point I realized I had PTSD from what had happened, again, worse than the first time. And there was no safety in my nervous system. It was so much freeze and so little safety, so much fight or flight, just so much that I reached a point, I remember making the decision on the couch one night, I'm just not going to be able to eat until there's more safety. It's just impossible. My system doesn't have room for food right now. So at least solid food. I also had an umbilical hernia that was a bit undiagnosed and was also extremely uncomfortable because it's I felt like my guts were always falling out. So putting food in there did not feel, that was intolerable level of physical discomfort just on that physical level. And then it didn't feel safe. I didn't feel like my guts couldn't stay in if I put food in them. So it was just okay, no eating for the time being. So I drank a protein drink or 2 a day and had a handful of cashews every once in a while. And that was my food intake for almost a year. And coming out of that was also a mess. Don't want to get into that too much. But the bottom line was I knew very well. And during that time, I also was getting 4 to 6 hours of not great sleep at night, pretty broken up, into pieces and so forth. And so, I'd already dealt with insomnia. I'd already dealt with food things and stuff, more on a basic limbic level in recovery. But this was a whole nother level of trying to heal from the partial relapse, rebuild my baseline of calm again, while also parenting my kids and running my business and having to pay a mortgage for the first time ever and all of this. Not an ideal circumstance, right? I know a lot of people have really unideal circumstances, and I share this to give you to have that companionship and camaraderie and say, hey, it can be done. It's not pretty. It's not fun. I recovered the first time living with my abuser. It's not fun, but it can be done. And that's where sometimes I see people say well, I can't recover because I can't sleep or I can't eat. I need nutrition or I need sleep or whatever. Sometimes that's true, but it can be done. But the cool healing thing, it's taken well over a year, more how long has it been? I don't even know, almost a year and a half now, to try to get my relationship with food back on the right foot. That's a whole story I'm not going to go into, really severe eating disorder, attachment stuff. But I cannot even begin to tell you what it is like to be able to eat enough nutrition and calories. Partly because my regulation needs are met. So now that I actually am getting nutrition from actual food and a variety of it, the first time I started eating enough and enough nutrition, it was oh my God, I have a new brain. I can sleep. I can think. I can oh my God, this is what? This is possible to feel this good all the time. Insane. So, and I want to say that too, because yeah, the regulation needs to come first. But holy shit, when you can eat enough and sleep enough on a regular basis, it's you turn into Superman. I can't even, oh my God, it's so amazing. And it feels good and I can digest it. And it's it's good. It's not a battlefield like it's been for the last 16 months. Incredible. Another complex trauma thing that I've struggled with for a long time. And I talk about some of these topics in coaching, so I know that some of y'all can relate to this. A couple were, I never felt like I was real. Never felt like I was a real person. It was never, I was the baby of the family. I was kind of just I was the accident. I was the one, there was no one around to really raise me. I literally homeschooled myself when I was like 11. Both my parents were gone all day at work. It was just a lot of neglect, a lot of I was just, I didn't seem to matter. I would cry, I would fuss, I would whine, and everyone would just tell me I was too much and too emotional. And nobody, it was never seen. I was never noticed. Kind of had a similar thing play out in my family when I was married. So I'd never really I'd never been included. I'd never felt like I existed, quite literally. I had a couple of years where I really had to convince myself on a daily basis. And I didn't succeed. I would try to convince myself on a daily basis that I actually do exist, and I'm not a fact, a ghost, or a figment of my own imagination, or some other weird thing. As crazy as that sounds, that was 2023, 2024. It was just a lot of me trying to convince myself that I do indeed exist, even though I'm dissociated, and even all of this. And I just never, ever been. It didn't seem like during that time I ended up, the people that I did meet I just kept recycling old patterns of, being a distraction or a shiny thing or used, or I hadn't healed enough to get to a point where I was actually relating to people in a healthy human way. And I really didn't know if it was possible. I believed, but I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get to a point where I can relate to people and feel like I have mass existence to me. And the more that I was healing in isolation, which is another thing that a lot of people say is impossible. But I was really aside from my kids are here, I live alone. I don't have friends. I don't have family. I don't have physical community in my area at all. So I see people at the grocery store. I see people at the cafe. I see people when I go out of my house to things, but I don't have anything regular in terms of community with other physical people, just online. So that was definitely tough. But I also knew that I just didn't feel safe around people because of what I've been through. And people were something that in a certain sense my nervous system craved, but it was more dysregulating than regulating to be around people for a long time. So I really had no idea how all that was going to work out. So I just kept focusing on healing my inner wounds, my relationship to myself and my younger parts, self-acceptance, self-love, embracing whatever my needs truly were, and getting to know myself, because no one else had taken the time to do that. So it was a lot of mirror work, a lot of internal family systems, somatic internal family systems parts work, and got to a point where, I started feeling like a real person, and more so in the last few months, probably 6 months. And then I went to San Diego recently. And it was the first time in my life I walked around a public place and people looked at me like I existed. And I was like, oh my God, maybe I am real. People look at me when I walk in the room like I actually have a body. It was shocking and it was incredible. And it was also interesting because it was at the time where the Charlie Kirk thing had just happened, and the world was so on fire, just so much conflict and so intense. But then I kept thinking, we live in this world where we all know each other's insides, but we don't really interact as people first. We just know everybody else's opinions, and it's this disembodied opinion that we're having an argument with in a virtual reality. And the real world, all the people I met were so cool, and they were so kind, and they were so accepting. I had great conversations with people at the airport and the Airbnb. People were just amazing. And then I came back and I reached a point, it was, about a week and a half ago. I hadn't peopled yet that week, trying to make sure I get at least one dose of people a week when my kids aren't here. And I went out to a tavern in a really sweet little downtown area, not far from here, a little town, very, very cute. And the music was incredible. And I was really embodied. I've got a lot more embodiment. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to go and just physically be around people and listen to some great music and have a drink. And then I ended up getting adopted by this family. The grandma was 77. It was her 3 daughters, husbands, other extended family, grandkids roommates, grandkids friends from middle school. And they were like, come sit with us. And it was I was so included. And everyone was like, oh, you're so cool. I like you. You're so interesting. Tell me more about this. And then I went to the dance floor and danced around with some of the women there. And the friend of the drummer befriended me and then introduced me to the drummer. And on my way out, these guys were doing some bet. It was almost midnight. It was probably midnight. And they were doing some bet where they're like, okay, now you're part of the bet. You flip the coin and you'll do a shot with us if we lose. So I did a shot with these people. I? But everywhere I went, I was included. And I was like, everybody thought everyone was cool with me. I was like just a totally normal person. And I was like, literally never happened before in my life. Like, ever. I'm still like, it's still new as I think about it. I'm like, this is still just like, oh, that's 36 years. I'm 36. That just happened for the first time. And then today, an incredible thing happened. I realized that I do need to learn on a body, like embodied level, how to trust other people again. And came across a woman who's local to me. She posted, she's very similar journey, chronic illness recovery. We'd never met in real life, but super cool. I always followed her journey. She followed mine. We kind of knew each other, virtual relationship or whatever. And then she was talking about how she's doing craniosacral therapy for complex PTSD and healing attachment wounds. And I was like, tell me more. So I signed up to do 5 sessions with her and had the first one today. And like, I cannot even, it restored my humanity and my dignity in my body in a way that I really didn't know was possible. Like, it was just a lot of very gentle touch and attunement. Like, what feels good? How close can I be? Touching the feet, touching different parts of the spine or the hips, like kind of all these different points.